Hey, KC, we should be recording now. How are you doing?
I am doing well, Marcelo. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for taking time of your Friday evening here to talk to me. So great pleasure to have you here with me. KC, can you do a quick introduction and tell us briefly what you work with?
Absolutely. I'm currently working as a senior DevOps engineer with Boeing on the Fleet Health Explorer team. I'm based out of Boeing, Vancouver. Our office is in Richmond. Prior to this, I used to work as a senior IT specialist at Fortinet, and I used to handle all the infrastructure for FortiMail, FortiVoice, and a few other FortiCloud products. I was Yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now professionally.
Fantastic, pretty cool stuff, and it's exciting. Must be pretty, really cool. KC, just go back to the past, and I realize you're still pretty young, so the past is not that far away. But want to get a little bit of a sense of how did technology get into your life? How did you get into introduced to computers? I know you're born in India, right? So
Yeah.
can you share a little bit of how was it? How did technology come to your life?
Absolutely. So, although I was born in India, a lot of my childhood was that I can remember anyway was not really in India. I was born in India, and when I was in grade one, around year 2000, we moved. My family moved to Muscat, Oman, in the Middle East, which is where I did all my schooling, including my high school. So while growing up, I remember getting our first computer, which had I believe either Windows 98 or like Windows XP, and it had Road Rash and a few other video games like the 2D Dave video game, and I loved playing those video games. When I was in like grade 7 or 8, I was pestering my parents for a PlayStation, the PS2 when it came out, and I got that, and I loved playing video games from there. The younger me, not knowing the internet piracy laws, was pirate at that time, trying to get games off the interwebs and trying to figure out how to install it on my computer, how to get around some of the restrictions around that. So there was a lot of poking and trying to find methods to get what I want, which was video games. So that's probably how my foray into IT started.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because your episode, I think it's going to be episode number 86. And so I interviewed quite a few people, and it's quite amazing the amount of people that tell me they got into computers and technology because of video gaming, right? So
Yeah.
so many people got into that technology because of that.
Yeah.
And just going back a little bit there into your education, your timing, Oman. How was it being Oman? How was elementary school, high school? How was that experience for you?
Absolutely. So although I was studying in Oman, the school that I went to was Indian School Muscat, and it was following a curriculum of CBSE, Central Board for Secondary Education, I believe is the full form. This is a board of education from India. There, I believe, in Oman and some United Arab Emirate countries, like United Arab Emirates, like some of these places have more immigrants than the local population itself. So in terms of like the number of Indian and Southeast Asian population in Oman, it was vast, right? So we had a Sri Lankan school, we had an Indian school, we had a school for Pakistan. Although I was in the Middle East, all my peers were pretty much Indian, at least in the high school. Of course, when you're around the house, you're playing soccer, then you're interacting with the localites. One of my biggest regrets is I never learned Arabic in all the years that I stayed there. I wouldn't say I was nowhere near the top at any point in the school in any particular activities, but I was a pretty active guy. I used to play basketball, I used to play soccer, I used to play badminton, and I used to get pretty decent grades in school. Nothing spectacular, but nothing to be concerned about. So I would say a solid 6 or 7 out of a 10 in terms of education there. Um,
Did you
and
go? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and in grade so up to grade 10, all of our subjects are pretty much fixed. We don't get to choose which subjects to take. But in grade 11 and 12, you get an option. That's where you branch out. So you can choose between physics or biology or commerce or arts. And I remember choosing physics, chemistry, mathematics with engineering drawing back then, and even a part of me now loved cars. Like I love cars more than anything else. I think those are the coolest inventions. So I wanted to become an automotive engineer, which I did end up becoming. But so yeah, so that was my yeah.
So, automotive engineer, fantastic. I'm assuming you like some racing as well.
Yes, a little bit. But you watch a lot of Formula One, and everyone's like, "I support Vettel. I support Hamilton." I'm just like, I think the Mercedes car is nicer than the Ferrari car because of more intricate aerodynamic work. And Adrian Newey did a really good job with the Red Bull car during the Vettel era. So I like the car part more than the driver part. I mean, they're both 50-50, and you need a really good driver and a car to win the race. But I'm more interested in the engineering behind it than the physical sport.
Yeah, that's the engineer in you. So, can you tell us how was it the transition from high school into the university? Was it in Oman as well, or did you go somewhere else, or how was it?
No, actually, that might have been one of the most challenging parts of my life. So after I finished my high school from grade 12, then I got into a National Institute of Technology in India. As far as Indian, the way the hierarchy of Indian colleges go, IIT is the top tier, which is the Indian Institute of Technology. And the next tier of education or colleges and universities is the National Institute of Technology, which I went to. There's one in Surat in Gujarat. It's called Sardar Vallabhbhai National Institute of Technology. And my program was the mechanical engineering. So I have a Bachelor of Technology in Mechanical Engineering program. So the first year is common subjects for all the students. So I did have a course in computer science, which was pretty challenging for me because my 11th and 12th grade were engineering drawing, whereas some other students had computer science, right? So they had a bit of a leg up there. So I remember we did some C programming there, some basic C programming, some electronics, ACE, electrical engineering, so mechanical engineering basics that we covered. The education in Muscat was me going to class mostly and then having some tuition classes after. But in bachelor's, for the first time, I was living away from my parents in the hostel by myself, and it took a bit of self. So they immediately you see two camps, right? So you see kids who were like really. I don't know, like really held back when they were living at home. Now they have all the freedom in the world, and unfortunately lack the self discipline and control to study. And then
Of
there's the
course.
other, and then there's the other camp of kids who I luckily was a part of, and took part in most of the so education stuff like studying or some extracurricular activities related to that, like design competitions and engineering competitions, etc. Um, I met some of the smartest people because the exam that the localites, the if you're in India, you have to give a separate exam called the AIEEE, which is one of the most challenging exams to get passed. As an NRI, a non-resident Indian, there are a few seats reserved at different NITs called DASA quota, which is direct admissions for student abroad. So I got to give SAT three subject tests, which was physics, chemistry, mathematics, and my entry was based on that score. So some of the localites that I met were the toppers amongst Indian competitive exams. So
Oh,
they were really something else. So there was a saying I remember in first year, one of our seniors said, "Whatever you can do, you'll find here someone who can do it better than you," and I think
yeah.
that was true. and very
Yeah.
inspiring to do better.
Yeah. So I talk about millions of people, right?
Yeah, that's right. These people
Crazy.
have topped an exam which was attempted by millions of people.
Yeah.
So,
Crazy, 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 crazy stuff. And so how is it? So you finished the course and you became an engineer, right? So is it an automotive engineer like you had planned, or?
right. So my undergrad was in mechanical engineering. So I wanted to do an undergrad in automotive engineering itself. There were only one or two options in India, and my parents were pretty insistent on doing it in a core branch for a wider range of opportunities after you finish the course. So I looked at the mechanical engineering curriculum, and it did include a subject called automotive engineering. So I'm like, I'm going to take this because it has that course. And in hindsight, that was actually a pretty good decision to take mechanical engineering. When it came to my masters, now I was adamant. I was like, I love cars. I'm only going to study about cars. So in Canada, there were only two institutes offering automotive engineering. One was University of Ontario Institute of Technology (UOIT), and the other was the University of Windsor. And UOIT didn't want me, so University of Windsor was where I ended up.
So how is it so did you ever work as an engineer in India at all, or did you come straight to Canada for
No.
the master's degree? How was it?
Yeah, no, I finished my undergrad and
Yep.
I did sit through an interview for a job. I did get a job as a engineer design trainee for a company that made medical sterilizers in Mahape in Mumbai. But unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, I was so my course ended in April, and in September was when my master's started in 2018. So I didn't end up working in India. And my reasoning for doing this was if I take some time off from undergrad and work, while I might really get good at what I do, in undergrad there are a vast array of subjects that you study. So if you take a break and then you're trying to get back into it, um, the memory with time tends to you lose some things with time, so I thought it would be harder to do everything a second time around, so I just wanted to do my masters back to back.
How did you go about selecting Canada as the place for your master's degree? Did you look into other countries as well, or did you
Yeah.
did you look into the list of institutions or select Canada? How was the process of selecting your master's degree institution?
Like I said, I was pretty stern on choosing automotive engineering, and one of the best. So I consider UK has United Kingdom has really good programs, and
I see.
Germany has really good programs for automotive engineering for masters. The problem with the United Kingdom was after you finish your program, the pathway to get a job and stay in the country was very challenging, and I wanted to so because I was my parents are Indian, and I was Indian. I didn't want to study in a country which had a like the value of currency. Like if you spend your fees in pounds and then you earn back in Indian rupees, even though you have like the same level of engineering prowess or whatever job you do, you just don't get paid as much, right? So I wanted to stay. I wanted an opportunity to work where I after I studied, and with UK that was dicey. The fact many of the jobs that are available, they have a condition saying if somebody needs um, support for visas or anything after, then this job is not for you. So that was an issue. Germany was very inviting, especially because they don't have the fees is I think pretty low compared to everything else. But from grade 6 to grade 12, I studied French, and I found it pretty challenging, and I was not very good at it. And I thought one other thing was when I went back to India from Muscat. In Muscat, I communicated in English with all my peers because we were all from different parts of India, and the medium of education was English. And when I was back in India, like the unofficial common language in India is Hindi, and every time I had to communicate in Hindi, it was pretty challenging for me. Like I'd have the idea crystal clear in English, And after I translated it, it just sounded very bad. Like I
Yeah.
think there were a couple of times people thought I didn't know what I was talking about. So I didn't want to face that again in Germany, right? So I preferred an English speaking country. Then the third destination was Detroit, and so I actually gave GRE exam and my TOEFL exam. So I scored I think 321 in GRE and about 116 or so in TOEFL, which were like good enough scores to get into University of Michigan with my undergrad grades as well for their automotive program. But 2000, much like the present time, back in 2018, that was the time around which Trump was going to get elected, or Trump was in power. And there were talks about implementing a minimum wage for H-1B workers of like 80,000. And I felt as a fresh graduate to get a job in mechanical engineering for 80,000 would be very challenging. And also, US has the same issue with UK, where a lot of the job postings include if sponsorship for visa required now or in the future, please do not apply. Like this job doesn't support it. So then I ended up choosing Canada, and I got just across the Detroit River. So where I went to university was University of Windsor. So yeah,
Fantastic. Welcome to Canada.
thank
So
you.
how was it to get to Canada, move to Canada? How was the experience of arriving in Canada? Hopefully you did not come during the winter.
No, I came in through the fall intake in September, which was I had some time to prepare for the winter. The first winter was brutal. It was the first time seeing snow, and the snowfall looks very beautiful from inside the house, and when you're warm in front of the fireplace. But when you have to go to class the next day, or when you need to go grocery shopping or work, that's when it hits you. This is I couldn't tell which areas were black ice, because you never see snow or ice, right? So I did take a couple of tumbles the first year, and then I learned to differentiate which places look icy and which places look normal.
Yeah.
But the education that I had at University of Windsor, uh, after going through SVNIT, the my undergrad, felt a lot easier, like so much easier. Like I had even there was a course that for electric vehicles where I had scored 100%. Like that was unheard of. And there were some courses in which I knew after like the middle of the exam, like halfway through the course, I'd already passed the course because of the cumulative stuff. And the professors were working professionals who would teach in their part time, and they actually wanted students to do well, which is again a cultural shift in from Indian professors who are like, half of you are going to fail this course. And then you're like, oh god, I hope it's not me.
Yeah, it's a good change, right?
Yeah,
So and then the pandemic hit.
yeah, and then after I finished my master's, so I moved to Toronto just because it's a bigger job market than in Windsor. I'd actually applied for quite a few places while I was in university, but I figured I needed to go to an area with more job opportunities for a higher probability of success. So I ended up moving with one of my relatives' friends in Hamilton, Ontario. Stayed there, and then these were COVID still hadn't started. Like this was January 2020. So I used to go to places in person with a resume in my hand, like dress up and then go try to submit. I'm like, hey, I'm a fresh graduate and I'm really interested in working in your company that does this cool thing. Do you guys have anything for me? I don't think they let you do that anymore, or they just say apply online. But back then, a lot of companies appreciated people coming in person and showing an interest
Yep.
to
Yep.
pick that. So I ended up getting a couple of job offers. It was a painful period. The first job's always really tough to get.
Of course,
Uh,
of course. Yeah.
yeah, I ended up getting a job as a QA technician for as a weld inspector at National Steel Car, which is a rail car company. And about a couple of months into it, then the COVID hit and the plant had to shut down because of a few COVID cases. So that's when I got laid off. And then The issue was, as a work permit, you're on your work permit, and it's only for 3 years. And if you want to get your permanent residency, then you need to have a certain amount of work experience.
Yep.
And jobs in mechanical engineering were really hard to get around that time. And I was just seeing what other avenues of opportunity, like, you can't try to fit what you have into the market. You It's better to look at what the market needs and amend yourself, because you can't change the market, right? So I was like, how can I change myself so I can get a job? And the options were like a real estate agent, an evergreen, an evergreen opportunity, I guess, in Canada, but not great people person. And so I thought, how about computers? And I since my bachelor's and master's were in mechanical engineering, I couldn't compete with like people who graduated from a
Of
computer
course.
science
Yeah.
thing. So I chose DevOps because it wouldn't have that same uh, talent pool from masters. And
But did you know anything about DevOps at all, or how did you find out about DevOps? Because you had your education had some exposure to programming, and I think you mentioned C and
yeah,
but did you ever have any exposure to DevOps at all, or how did you hear about DevOps? Because
no,
you're in a tight spot, right? So you're in
yeah,
Canada. I'm assuming you wanted to stay in Canada, of course, and the pandemic is going on. It's hard to find work as a mechanical engineer, which is your qualification. And
yes,
you gotta go, oh, okay, what do I do here? Either become a real estate professional, right?
yeah,
So for those there in Brazil, real estate professional is somebody who helps selling houses, right? So just trying
that's
to help the people in Brazil understand what real estate means. And then you say DevOps is the way, but how did you find out about DevOps?
yeah. I did some research. There are some companies that help you with getting a job. What these companies do is they train you, and then they match you to potential employers, right? And then you go through a small interview process. So I was looking at different boot camps. And when I was looking at the boot camps, there were things like the front end developer, back end developer, Java full stack developer, data Salesforce administrator, and then that's where QA technology and DevOps. So that's the first place I heard DevOps, and the selling point of DevOps was no coding needed. uh yeah. So the thing is, I wouldn't say that's true anymore, but back then I didn't know any better, so I was like, hey, no coding required. And I looked at the wages and everything, and they were pretty they were much higher than an entry level mechanical engineers wages. So yeah, I ended up selecting DevOps engineering. And then um, and then there were a couple of boot camps that I could have joined, but they were all online. And I didn't want to attend an online boot camp because it would feel impersonal. So I wanted to attend something in person where I could, physically hold someone. I was like, "Hey, I don't understand this. Can you please explain this to me?" And there were just, I think, two or three options in entire Greater Toronto area, and I ended up going to Pragra, which is the boot camp in I think they're still in Mississauga. And so that's where I did the DevOps program there. But the thing with the bootcamp is, unlike university, it's not comprehensive. So if there was a class on Saturdays for, like, I think from 9 or 10 a.m. all the way till 5 or 6 p.m. in the evening. But for every hour of their instruction, then you need to spend 3 or 4 hours by yourself studying for this. And I had to do this while searching for mechanical engineering jobs and other jobs that were related to my qualification and studying at the same time. So I'd say that was a pretty challenging time as well.
And this is all during the pandemic too, right? So this is all during the pandemic, right? The
Oh
pandemic
yeah,
is going on, and you're going through the boot camp. Was
yeah.
it on premises, or was it all remote type of learning?
It was luckily on premises. So
Mm.
on Saturday, we attended the class in person, and they would go through a technology, say, for example, Git or Jenkins or Kubernetes. And then a Wednesday was like a refresher course for just a couple of hours online. So it was just the Saturday long session that was in person.
And how long was the boot camp? How many?
I believe the boot camp was about 3 months long. 3 months long, yeah.
And then how was it after boot camp?
Oh, okay. So
How
after boot camp, luckily the plant opened up again, and went back to being a QA engineer. Sorry, a QA technician for a while, and then after a while, there was a position that opened up at the plant for an industrial engineering technician. So I applied for that, interviewed, and then I got into an industrial engineering technician position, which was very interesting. And
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah.
So you got into a job with the company that you had got your first opportunity in
That's
Canada,
right.
right?
That's right. So I started on the plant floor. I don't know if you've ever been to a factory, but they're like different colored helmets for hard hats for different
Mhm.
positions. I started out with a blue hat, which is what the QA technicians had, and the supervisors have the white hat, and the gray hat are like the engineers. I got to work on the same plant floor where I had a blue hat with the white hat, which felt pretty special to me, and I got a parking spot inside the plant floor. I mean, it doesn't feel like much, but back then I
Yeah.
thought it was pretty something,
Yeah.
right?
Pretty cool. Going up on the food chain, like we say over here. It's
Yes.
so how did life evolve from that job into getting to the DevOps side of things?
Yes. So I thought I would stay. So while I was doing that job, there were a couple of things that I was not happy with. One was the thing with the factory job is that more or less it's repetitive, like the same time studies that you do, same optimizations that you do. I don't do very well in a job that has the same thing over and over again. It feels repetitive and not mentally stimulating, especially after doing undergrad and masters where you're solving different types of solving problems that
Challenging problems. Yep.
challenging. So it felt like it was not the right fit for me. And another thing was the environment in the plant floor is a bit harmful for your health. Even though you're wearing your respirators and goggles and your earplugs, there's smoke and dust, welding fumes. Then a couple of people, even while I was working, unfortunately had accidents and they died in the plant. So this is a pretty, it's a pretty it was not somewhere that I saw myself working long time, right? So at the same time, while I was working on the plant floor, I would spend at least 2 hours in the evening studying for certifications for my for so I knew I wanted an IT career after this because it would I wanted to try an IT career. For one, the wages are higher. Second, the working conditions are less harmful on your health. So I got, I believe, the AWS Solution Architect certificate around that time.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think, and I think I also got the CKA, and then I'd applied to many jobs. I've been through so many rejections for your first IT position. In fact, I started applying my IT skills even at my industrial engineering job. So we had one task where we had to figure out how many cars were crossing a railway crossing near the plant. So the way that they would do it is they'd post someone at the gate and who would manually count the number of cars. I ended up using one some Python. So there was security camera footage, and there was some Python code that I could find online, which used the library. Can't remember the name of the library, but it had the vision to be able to identify cars, and it could give you the count of the cars. So I was able to apply it for that. I was able to write some Python automation script to go through a lot of the old Excel files for the past car orders and pull up studies. These tasks saved a lot of time for the company. So I mentioned these in my resume, and finally, after many interviews, there was an interview at Fortinet, and then after the interview, I probably answered like 70% of the questions. It's like, no way these people are going to hire me. And then I got the call. I was like, what? Really? You guys want me? No, I didn't say that. So it's just, of course you want me.
That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. And it's pretty cool how you use some of your learnings on IT to solve some of the problems you have at the factory at the time, right? So even before you were able to get into your first job, can you share a little bit more about the first job? How was it? What were you doing at the first
Yeah.
job?
Yeah, at Fortinet. So when I first started, I would say working at Fortinet was one of the best experiences at my life. My boss was amazing. He understood that I didn't have a lot of experience in this field, so he gave me all the tools I needed and all the time I needed to study. So he never gave me a deadline for any of the work. And after I joined, I took a couple of subscriptions online for different services based on what we needed for this specific job. Now, a lot of my DevOps boot camp and a lot of training was based on like cloud services like AWS and GCP and Azure. But these people at Fortinet 40 Cloud, they actually set up their own servers and their own networking gear, and then they set up their services on the. So we have our own data centers in Burnaby and in Ottawa and a few other places around the world. So I had to learn how to. I had to so I never touched a server before, right? So I had to learn how servers work. What are the different types of storage that you have? What are the different networking gear that you have? What are the virtualization software that you would install on top of these? How do you set up a data center? How do you set up the monitoring systems? And my manager was incredibly supportive of all of this. There was some storage units which was so new that they didn't even have documentation out yet, and I was working with the supplier Dell or Pure and then trying to figure out how to get these going. And my first so the way I got my first product was there was someone going on vacation and they were handling the 40 mail project, and I was like, hey, can I take the 40 mail project? The reason I wanted to take that was mostly for job security. Was like, I'm like, these people are so they're so kind. They're letting me study and they're letting me learn. I'd go through like documentation for probably a couple of months when I was in the beginning, and then I took over the 40 mail, and then there was a lot of learning dealing with TAC team and setting up customer instances. It was a really great experience.
That's fantastic. Let's just stop for 1 second here. Can you give us our audience a brief and overview on what DevOps is all about?
Sure. DevOps is actually not a position, although it is my title. It's not a real position. So the way it came about to being was that operations team was completely isolated from a development team. So these were siloed, and developers used to work on different features, implementing different requirements for the customers. And in the end, once the code was completed, they'd copy the package into some like a USB drive and then hand it off to the operations team. Then the operations team would be responsible for setting these on the servers and scaling it up. But now there would be a drift in the configuration and environment between the operation team and the development team. So the idea came about. I think Martin Fowler was the gentleman who created this idea, and the idea was to get the developers and the operations to work together from the beginning, so that all the environments are consistent, and apply development practices to operations and keep operations in mind while developing. So keep the whatever environment you're going to deploy in mind while developing. So this is what DevOps is about.
Thank you for sharing that. And how did things evolve at Fortinet? How did the work progress?
Yes. So initially, I was working with the 40 mail team, and then 40 voice again. Usually I got to take over service when somebody goes on vacation, and then I would get some added responsibility. And then 40 switch, which is the backend for all of the 40 switches, is based on a Kubernetes environment, but this is a self-hosted Kubernetes environment. So it's not a managed Kubernetes environment like GKE, AKS, or EKS. So creating your own Kubernetes cluster from scratch is very challenging, and it had many difficulties. And I was working together with developers and in setting these up. And the I loved working at Fortinet, and the team was great. My peers were fantastic, and the only downside was because of the security requirements. Fortinet is a cybersecurity company. we're not allowed to expand onto the public cloud, which is probably where like 80 or 90% of the market would go to because of the elasticity. So say you need a lot of compute or a lot of storage, you would use a cloud provider,
Public cloud. Yep.
public cloud provider. So
Yeah.
although I was getting a lot of experience with on-prem and um, uh, physical and devices, I felt like as a cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, I wanted more of the cloud experience, which is why I'm at the current. Well, one of the reasons why I'm at the current role.
Can you provide a brief explanation what Kubernetes is all about?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know it's pretty hard to do a brief
No, no,
explanation of
it's actually.
Kubernetes, but just a quick one.
Yeah, it's actually okay. Once you start getting into how to deploy an application, it's pretty challenging. But the overarching theme of why we use it is very simple. I'll explain. Okay, so now say you have five servers, right? And you have five servers, and you want to deploy an application onto one of the five servers. So the old way that you would go about doing it is you would install an operating system or a hypervisor on each of the five servers. Then you would manually copy the application into any one of the servers, and then you will monitor the CPU utilization or the memory utilization. Those are the two factors that storage is usually a separate unit. So by memory, I mean RAM, right? So CPU and memory. Now, if the threshold of what is safe to run on one server is exceeded, then you would again copy it onto the second server. But each time you're manually copying or you're manually maintaining where the application is running on those five servers. So what Kubernetes does is that abstracts away the underlying hardware. So you no longer want to now when you create a Kubernetes cluster, you're saying I have these five nodes. A node is basically any hardware device that can run your application. It can be a server like a Dell R650. It can be a laptop. It can be a Raspberry Pi. So the architecture matters. It needs to speak the same language, like either the RISC architecture or the CISC architecture of the x86 64 or 32-bit. But other than that, you no longer are worried about which specific server you're running your application on. So the reason Kubernetes exists is to abstract away the underlying hardware and to allow scalability. So that's simple. How you do it, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's a great product, so it's really
And,
fantastic. And
yeah.
just going back to your certifications, because I think you mentioned you got a AWS certification, right? So which one did you get for AWS?
I first got the cloud practitioner certificate and
Okay.
then the
Yep.
solution architect certificate.
Fantastic. And I think you mentioned you got your CKA as well, the
But
Certified Kubernetes Architect, right?
yes, I got the CKA certificate. I got the CCNA certificate. I have a HashiCorp Terraform Associate certificate. I got a GCP Cloud Associate certificate, and the latest one is a professional data engineer. Yeah, I just keep
You
collecting certificates.
you got a lot of hours overnight, man.
Yeah.
A lot of hours, a lot of preparation to get all those certifications. Congratulations, that's pretty cool stuff. So, and how did you get from? I think you went from Fortinet to Boeing. Oh, and before we jump to Boeing, I think a lot of people don't may not know Fortinet. It's a huge company, right? So fantastic set of security related products, firewall, and everything else, right? So and how did you get from Fortinet to Boeing? You went from Fortinet to Boeing, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I wanted to work with some public cloud service, but I wasn't searching for a job like the way that I did, fresh out of school or when I was in working at the plant at National Steel Corp for an IT job. This was more of a casual browsing search, really, and I love visiting museums that are related to engineering. So I visited a museum in Seattle called the Museum of Flight. Now, if you've known anything about Everett area, and that's like Boeing, that's the Boeing city. I didn't know it was the
Yep.
Boeing city. So I went to this museum of flight, and my breath was taken away by the entire. It's one of the best museums I've ever visited, and if you have a chance to go, you should definitely visit. They have an SR-71 Blackbird, which was a spy plane, which is one is till date I think it's one of the fastest planes humans have ever created. And there was this wall on the in the museum that shows the human innovation in aerospace. Uh, it le- just about 100 years ago is when we had Wright brothers taking their first steps in aerospace, and look at how far we've come in pretty much one or two generations, right? We've gone from that to getting jet planes. When William Boeing, the gentleman who started the company in 1914, started, there were no jet planes. Boeing 707 was one of the first jet planes, and that was only a few decades ago as well. So uh, the way that just the way that we've gone so far in technology, that we've advanced, it was amazing. And as an engineer, I won't live forever, but the work that I leave behind will stay in some form or the other. Like, you can hold up a pen today. Maybe the guy who invented the pen is not there, but his invention still is there, right? So I wanted to be a part of,
Your legacy.
yeah, your legacy, right? Your immortality project in a sense, I guess. So I wanted to do something that would make a difference. So I applied at Boeing for a DevOps engineer position, and immediately I got a rejection email. It's like, sorry, this. And then luckily a couple of months later, I got a mail from the recruiter, and she asked me to apply for a senior position, and applied, interviewed for the position, and very fortunate to be working at a company where the work I do makes a difference.
That's fantastic news. And you're working with DevOps, right?
That's right. So my title is that of a senior DevOps engineer at FHX. So I've been working on a cloud migration project from on-premises to Google Cloud Platform.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
GCP.
GCP, yes, sir.
Cool. Very cool stuff. And Casey, can you tell us? Of course, not telling us any secrets or anything like that. Can you tell us some of the challenges you deal with in your day to day? So because you're doing like a migration, and just to help people understand, on premises, you mean you have your own infrastructure, you have your own applications running on the infrastructure that's controlled and managed
Yeah,
by Boeing. And
that's right.
Boeing is all of a sudden looking to, oh, okay, we got to move some of these workloads that we have from on-premises to the cloud, to the public cloud, and to GCP, which is the Google Cloud Platform product. And it comes with its own set of challenges, security, and everything else that we hear every single day, right?
That's
Can
right.
you tell us a little bit of some of the challenges you're dealing with and some of the interesting problems you're trying to resolve as well?
Absolutely. Again, so I can speak about the tools and technologies, no problem. So the tools and technologies, so the ones on premises, we have a data warehouse. A data warehouse is where you have some sort of structure to your data, and you would load up all your data in that data warehouse. So once you have this data, then now to make actionable insights of this data, you need to load it into another software. So for us, we have a tool called the Fleet Health Explorer, which has other tools. For example, Airplane Health Analytics, Part Explorer, etc. So now to be able to search for this data from this data warehouse, what we do is we load this into Solar. Now, Solar is a full faceted text search engine application. So to load data into Solar, Solar can trigger an import, but unfortunately there's no way to set up like a cron job to trigger it automatically. So we had to set up a couple of Jenkins jobs that we've been doing to set up this search. Now there are more advanced ways to set up the search. For example, vector search, which is one of the ways that our LLMs are able to get relevant results. With cloud, first of all, the scalability is vast compared to on-premise resources, right? So not only are we trying to move over our on-prem services to the cloud. Now, when we set up these cloud resources, these on-prem resources were set up manually by clicking buttons. We want to set these cloud resources up such that they are repeatable, and there is, the development. Like earlier, I spoke about applying development practices to operations. So one of these is IAC, infrastructure as code. So we use the HashiCorp's Terraform tool to write scripts to be able to create infrastructure across different environments. So maybe today we have dealing with like a regular GCP environment, and tomorrow maybe we need to deal with the GCP environment for US only, or for like a specific ITA related data, which is international traffic and arms and regulations. So it's like highly regulated data. So if I have a Terraform script, then it enables, I don't need to do that work again and again, and any changes can be easily applied across all the environments, right? So those are a couple of those are two of the challenges, Marcelo. So one is using setting up infrastructure using IAC. Another is not only copying what is on premises to the cloud, but there are some cloud offerings that are more efficient than on premises. For example, data flow, which is offered by GCP, is a managed version of sorry, Composer is a managed version of Airflow, but it scales much more easier, and you don't need to manage any of the underlying infrastructure. So, so a selection of tools on cloud and setting them up with IAC are some of the things that I do.
Super cool. And it's I think you mentioned Jenkins as well, which is a tool for building pipelines, right? So it can
Yeah,
really help you with testing applications and building images, push images to whatever registry they have to go. And
that's right.
it's cool that you mentioned you're building Terraform. Terraform is a super cool tool as well, right? So you can define your template, your script, and you can say, okay, apply, and it's going to build your resources, right? Your instances or your load balancers, your ingresses, whatever you need
Exactly.
for your overall infrastructure. Like you mentioned, if you're going to set up a different cluster of somebody else, you can use the same script to set up exactly the same infrastructure as
That's right.
somebody else, and have a, for example, a production environment, development environment, stage environment.
That's it.
It's pretty interesting because earlier in our conversation here, you're kind of explaining how things were in the past, right? And
Yes.
this would be right now with infrastructure as code, you can do some of these things super quickly, right? So you can
Yes.
deploy a completely new multi-node cluster with all sorts of things you can think about in a matter of seconds, if maximum minutes. In the
That's right.
past, this would take days, weeks
Yeah.
to get it done, right?
Yep.
Not thinking that you gotta go buy your hardware, you gotta
Yep.
apply the just
Procurement
crazy,
time.
and like I mentioned, the whole elasticity, right? So you need more. You the cloud is very quick in give you the
Scalability.
resources that you need. They certainly charge you for that for sure,
Yeah.
but it's if you don't need it, just throw those resources away and
That's right.
shrink whatever your infrastructure is, which is super cool stuff.
Most of the time it's actually even worth paying for. So say for example you're doing a job where there's a job that so there's a vector search api where you're tokenizing a lot of data. If
Yep.
you're doing it on premises with the hardware that you have, you may be spending a month with it, whereas with on cloud you're doing it in a day but you're spending maybe 10,000 more. But that
Yep.
10,000 would be worth it because you don't have to pay the wages of all those.
One day instead of a month.
A month, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All the wages of those people and your time to market. In
Yeah.
these cases, it would make more sense
Yeah.
to use.
It's quite amazing. And talk about technology and a huge organization like Boeing, right? So with
Yeah,
one of the most influential companies of the industry here, with airplanes flying millions of people every single day, right? So super cool technology that you deal with, but I realize you're super young still, so you're kind of the early stages of your career. But do you have when you look into the future and you think about, I like the technology that I'm dealing with, but maybe it would be interesting to try this or the technology at some point in time in the future. Anything that crosses your mind? I know you spoke about large language models, which is something that everybody's talking about these days, and AI. But is anything in particular that draws your attention and you think may be interesting to work with in the future?
That's a good question. So I think in terms of tools and technology, there hasn't been any tool or technology that we haven't used at point. There's, for example, you could name a tool, for example, AWS Cloud Formation. And if I search my intra-site network, I'm sure there would be some developer, some team somewhere that would have had worked with that tool, right? So again, we're not. So although our cloud team is moving to GCP, we're not just with GCP. We have Azure Cloud. We have our own version of ChatGPT, that
Hmm.
Boeing conversational AI that we
Yep.
run on our own hardware. I mean, the hardware that Azure provides, but it's on Azure. Some teams are running on Azure environment. Some teams are running on AWS environment. So there are enterprise internal clouds. There are external offerings to customers. So I think the Boeing IT leadership is doing a great job with implementing one of the new technologies that we're implementing is the data mesh technology. So,
Hmm.
so we have a large amount of data across like different airline providers. Now, by applying tags to this data, we have a better way of um, classifying which data is, so it's easier to classify data and provide it as restricted data to some people, and then provide access to some people in an easier way. So there's a data bricks data mesh integration going on. So yeah, there, like I said, there's nothing that I can think of that hasn't been used at the
Yeah.
moment.
It looks like there's plenty of opportunities to challenge you as you progress within your career with Boeing, right? So, which is pretty exciting. Pretty exciting
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
And one of my favorite things about this company is that they're willing to try. It's not like, okay, we're doing it this way, so we're stuck to this way. So if I go to my boss and like, hey, can we try this tool? Sometimes you get pushback. You're like, hey, this is not the way we do things around here. No, they just be like, here's a test environment. Go try it. Show me a POC, and if it works, let's implement it. So I like
Cool.
that.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a land, the land of opportunity, right? So if
Yes.
you have an idea, you sell the idea, people support the idea, get it done.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's super cool stuff. And I know you told me a little bit earlier in the conversation here that one of the things you regretted back in when you were thinking Oman was that you did not learn Arabic.
Yeah.
So besides that, when you look back into your life, again, like I said, you're still pretty young. Anything that you think you'd have done differently than what you have done?
Good question. Sometimes I feel if in undergrad, if I chose a computer science program instead of my mechanical engineering program, I would be much further along in my career. Maybe working for one of the bank companies. But I chose to pursue what I really liked and what I really was passionate about in undergrad. I was part of the SAE club. We built a car in university, and at masters I was part of the hyperloop. We built a hyperloop uh, rig. So uh, knowing all this, and was talking to my mom about this, if I go back to 2014, I know my life would be much easier if I chose computer science instead of mechanical engineering. But if I were to do it all over again, I would still choose mechanical engineering. When
Yeah.
you're doing something that you're really passionate about, time passes by really quickly. And
Mhm.
but when you're doing something that is that you don't like, or that is being forced upon you, or upon your circumstances, then it feels like a chore. So in terms of that, that's a very good question. What would I do
Yeah.
different?
Makes
Uh,
you makes you think, right? But if you don't mind, if I give you my opinion,
yeah.
I think life took you for the path that you had to go through, and I think that the mechanical engineering, like you said, was something that you're passionate about. it may have not given you some of the computer science kind of detail or information that you gather with your certifications in your boot camp and the additional work that you did. But at the same time, it took you through some of the Indian professors that are very challenging and really prepared you for really hard work, and also gives you the curiosity to work a problem, to help you understand mechanical systems in a way that I think are totally you can get the knowledge and you can easily transfer to computer science, and I think that served you really well, right?
Fair.
And even the challenge you went through coming to Canada and having to find work, and then the pandemic hit everything else.
Yeah.
Nothing's easy, right?
Yeah.
So it's fantastic. It's a great story, and sometimes you never know, right? So if it's the butterfly effect. I'm sure you heard about that. So if you change something in the past, you never know what kind of impact that's going to have in your life, right? So
That's it.
so if you take a time travel kind of machine, go back in time, you got to be careful about what we
That's it.
change, because you never
Absolutely.
know what may happen, right? So just like I was telling you when we were talking before we start to record, we have a large group of people in Brazil, and they are trying to get into technology, and many of these people are going to be listening to this interview and trying to get some insights on your experience, and what do you recommend to somebody that's in a position where you were, like say 9, 10 years ago, and they're looking to, okay, what do I do? Is this thing of technology, computer science for me? Because some of the challenge that some of the younger generations have today is it's different than when I started 40 years ago, which is
Mm.
when I started there was nothing. There
Yeah.
was no,
Yeah.
and you had one path you gotta follow, and today there's so much information, right? So you go online. Okay, there's a roadmap for everything. There's a roadmap
Yeah.
for, I'm sure you know roadmap.sh. There's a roadmap
Yes.
for developers,
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
programming, for data science, and you go, oh my God, where do I go? And people are always looking for the perfect path in life, which I don't think it
Yeah.
exists. But
Yeah.
what would you recommend to these people that are trying to get into technology and trying to decide if that's for them or not?
Absolutely. Good question. First, before you even get into technology, I'd like to talk about something a little different, but I think what's more important. Um, one, uh, first, there's, some people have this. Maybe even I had it when I was younger. That some people are smarter than other people. I'd like to say that nobody is smarter than the other person, right? You don't know what challenges the other person went through, and everyone has unfair advantages. Even no matter how bad your situation is, you have an unfair advantage over the others. So do not compare yourself to others, for one. Second is there's this course by it's a massive online open online course MOOC by Barbara Oakley, which says learning how to learn, in which there are different learning techniques. For example, the Pomodoro technique, time boxing, then how repetition leads to concrete ideologies. Memory techniques. There's a book called Moonwalking with Einstein, where the one of the world's memory championship talks about how you actually remember things. So first of all, uh, I didn't know what servers were like a couple of years ago, like 4 years ago. I didn't know what servers were, and there's no way on earth that I would be able to do the job that I am doing right now. And I'm by no means like an exceptionally smart guy, and I'm by no means the only guy who is from outside DevOps engineer who got to be a DevOps engineer. There was a guy I met at a party. He was a dentist who became a DevOps engineer because after he came to Canada, he couldn't go through the steps to get certified here. There is a preschool or like a kindergarten teacher who is a DevOps engineer because she wanted to earn more to support her family. So if anybody can do it, and if you have any doubt in yourself, uh, let me be the one to tell you: if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. So that's the premise, right? So that's the first premise. Yeah, you can do it. Now coming on to like tools and technology, like you mentioned, roadmap.sh is just perfect in the way that it lays out the roadmap in a logical manner to go about different tools and technologies. uh, I would say don't spend a lot of time reading theory. Rather try hands-on stuff and breaking things. And once you break things, you'll start going to Stack Overflow. Now you have ChatGPT. I'm pretty envious because back when I started, there was no ChatGPT. So you can save some more time instead of trying to search for the resource. You can go to ChatGPT and then try to place your problems. Yeah, ChatGPT is actually a very good resource in learning. You could just type in, "Hey ChatGPT, act as my mentor for an IT career. Here are the things that I know. What would be the most logical thing to learn next for a job?" And it's going to do. It's based on the ChatGPT's training is all the data in the world. It'll give you an answer better than any one person can, because any one person will have their own bias. Like I would say, learn Linux, learn the Ubuntu thing, learn Git, learn Jenkins, learn Docker, Kubernetes, Terraform, and AWS, and you get a job because it worked for me. And somebody else will give you another set of tools because they work for them. But if you ask ChatGPT, then you'll get a statistically highest probable answer. And my dad always used to say, plan your work and work your plan. So always plan your work, have goals, and then work your plan. It's okay if you don't reach your goals, but at least you're working towards something concrete, right? So those are some things. Those are some of my ideas on this topic, Marcel.
That's fantastic. A set of recommendations. Thank you very much. I'm sure that people are going to appreciate and put to good use. Thank you for that. And do you have any? I know you mentioned a book shortly ago, but any other recommendations you may have regarding books, music,
Yeah.
or games, or movies, or food, or anything that you may want to share with the audience?
One other thing I'd like to mention regarding the previous question was what really helped me was a mentor. My mentor was a person named Sarsha Roshan. I got lucky because I went to Pragra. And usually, if you go to places like Meetup, where for example, that's where I met Marcelo too, right? We were in the Van Log Meetup. So if you go to places and you find people who are like-minded and working towards the same goal, uh, that will just accelerate what you're doing, because as humans you tend to compete. So if you find somebody else who you're doing a program with, then you'll have a healthy sense of competition and collaboration. And then you can there are some friends who I record my interviews with and ask them for feedback, and they do the same. And now we have like two sets of questions of interviews to prepare for their next interview. So that's one thing. In terms of books, one of the books that I would recommend is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's not related to technology, but the reason why I would recommend that book is a man can go through any circumstances as long as he has a strong why. So, not that I'm not much into philosophy, but the way that book is written, the man was in like the worst of circumstances. So you mentioned Brazil. I know I've seen some things, read some. So they're in the worst of circumstances, but um, things will get better if you work towards them and strongly believe in it. So that's one book. Another book. So in terms of technology books that I really liked. So first one would be the Inaction series of books. Like for example, Git in Action, Docker in Action, Kubernetes in Action, Terraform in Action. These are great books because they give you practical examples along with theory, and I think they're just brilliant to read. If you're getting started in IT and the first thing you want to learn is Python, there's a free book called Python Crash Course by Eric Matthews. It doesn't delve too much on the fundamentals, but it gets you up and going with Python. And once you've completed that book, there's another book called Automating the Boring Stuff with Python, which I think in the Crash Course book, there are three projects. One is a game, weather data analytics, and I believe another website. So with these and with the automate the boring stuff thing, I think you'd have a pretty good grasp on Python. And when you're learning and you want to get into IT, I would also start a blog and post what you've learned, what you've done, with links to your GitHub regularly, so that there's some record of your learning and it acts as your portfolio when you're looking for a job, which looks great. So, yeah, these are some of the thoughts I have on that, Marcelo.
Thank you. Great recommendations. And are there any questions that you think I should have asked you that I did not ask so far?
Um, Not really, but I think if you were to ask me, I think there was some discussion about what future technology was I excited about, or what, um, yeah, or what upcoming tech thing that that excites me. Uh, so if so, so to answer that question, it is LLMs. I think LLMs are going to change the way that we function. The other thing that there are two other technologies that I think are really cool and will change the world. One is Neuralink, but with Neuralink, you either have to be an expert neurosurgeon or like expert biologist. So the learning curve I think is a bit steeper, but um, the um, the effects that it will have for humanity are um, just outside our current imagination. And the third one is all the robotics right now. The famous ones are the Tesla bot, but there are other robotic companies that are trying to. If you look at something as simple as the human hand, the way that we have all our degrees of freedom and all our joints, we've not been able to create a robotic arm that can, mimic the functioning of a hand. And I think this is just a great space of research and technology currently that's going on in trying to use AI and machine learning and robotics to get um, prosthetics and other robotics to help automate human activities.
So you mentioned Neuralink. Have you read Pandora Star from Peter F. Hamilton? Are you familiar with the book?
No, sorry. Is that where they
I
open up Pandora's box and all the
I
unfinished upon the
I'll
world?
send you, yeah, I'll send you the link. I think you'd enjoy reading the book because it's very futuristic, and there's a society where people are enhanced by technology. Right? So you have you're connected to this internet. You
Absolutely.
have you're online, right? So you have access to all sorts of information, and you also have a backup of your memory. So and if you die, they basically get that backup, they clone, they create a new body, and they install the backup, and there you go again. So you live again, right? So that's a very, so I'll send you the link. I think you'd enjoy reading that book.
Sounds
And Casey, any contact information, anything you'd like to share with our audience, LinkedIn, social network, anything you want to mention here, please feel free to.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to connect with me, I think LinkedIn is the best source. That's where I read my messages. On social media, usually, I tend to avoid screen time on social media. LinkedIn, I log in at least once every weekend to see what's going on. You can reach me on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/in/Srikar, Srikar hyphen KC. Maybe we could leave a link in the chat in the
Yep,
description.
I'll do that. Yep. Yep. So we have been talking for, sorry, anything else you'd like to mention?
No, no, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you. So we have been talking for a little bit more than 1 hour. So for me, it feels like it went by in 3 seconds because there's so much that we spoke about, so much great, information, fantastic story, and great experience that you have been able to share with us. And I just want to take a moment to thank you. So it's been a great pleasure. And hopefully this was as entertaining for you as it was for me. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Marcelo. It was nice talking to you.
You're very welcome. Give me 2 minutes. I'm just going to stop recording and we'll talk a little bit more.
Sure.
Thank you.